The Willowbrook Mall had been dead for years. Its hollow skeleton, cracked tiles, boarded-up storefronts, and flickering neon signs stood as a relic of the 1980s, forgotten by everyone except urban explorers and local teens daring each other to spend a night inside. But to Ethan Cole, it was just a paycheck. A 28-year-old former Marine with a quiet demeanor and a haunted past, Ethan had taken the overnight security job to escape the noise of the world. The silence of the empty mall, he thought, would be a refuge. His supervisor, a grizzled man named Harris, handed him a rusted keyring and a flashlight on his first night. "Don't mind the stories," Harris grunted, avoiding Ethan's eyes. "Kids say it's haunted. But the real problem's the squatters. Chase 'em out if you see 'em." Ethan didn't believe in ghosts. He'd seen enough real monsters in his time overseas. Still, as he walked the mall's central atrium that first night, the weight of the emptiness pressed against him. The pet store's abandoned animals, a handful of scrawny cats and a parrot missing half its feathers, hissed and fluttered as he passed. Odd, he thought. They're usually asleep at night. By the third night, the routine felt almost peaceful. Ethan patrolled the corridors, his boots echoing in the vast silence, pausing only to jot notes in his logbook. But then, the noises began. It started with the escalators. Long disconnected from power, their metal teeth suddenly clanked and groaned, as if something heavy dragged itself upward. Ethan radioed Harris, who laughed. "Old buildings settle, kid. You'll get used to it." He didn't. The next night, Ethan found a child's hairpin on his desk, a tiny butterfly clip crusted with glitter. No one else had access to the security office. When he reviewed the grainy CCTV footage, the cameras showed nothing but static during the time he'd been away. Then came the laughter. It echoed from the food court, a high, girlish giggle that skittered down the hallways. Ethan followed the sound, flashlight beam slicing through the dark, until he reached the abandoned toy store. The shelves were thick with dust, save for one. A porcelain doll in a lace dress sat perfectly upright, its head tilted as if watching him. Ethan's throat tightened. He hadn't touched it. The incidents escalated. Each night, Ethan discovered something new: a teddy bear with its stuffing ripped out, a pair of child's shoes arranged neatly outside the women's restroom, a music box playing a warped lullaby in the empty arcade. The cameras captured nothing but shadows. Harris grew impatient. "You're seeing things, Cole. Get some sleep." But Ethan's military instincts prickled. This isn't paranormal, he realized. Someone's here. One night, while reviewing footage, he spotted a blur of movement near the west wing. He froze the frame. A figure in a red hoodie stood just beyond the camera's reach, face obscured. Ethan rewound the tape. The man appeared in every clip, always lingering at the edges, always watching. 2 weeks in, Ethan found a note taped to his locker. "I love watching you scream." He stormed to Harris's office, but it was empty. A crumpled memo on the desk caught his eye: security feed loop installed per request. No record of overnight activity. Ethan's blood ran cold. Harris had been erasing the footage. That night, he armed himself with a tactical knife and a police-grade flashlight. He didn't have to wait long. At 3:17 a.m., the pet store erupted in chaos, dogs howling, cats screeching. Ethan sprinted toward the noise, only to find the animals clawing at their cages, eyes wild. Behind him, a child's voice whispered, "Help me." He turned. The porcelain doll from the toy store lay at his feet, its head cracked open. Inside was a Polaroid photo. Ethan's breath stopped. The photo showed him sleeping in the security office. The mall became a labyrinth. Every shadow pulsed with menace. Ethan's radio crackled with static, but beneath the noise, he heard breathing. "You shouldn't have looked," a distorted voice hissed. Ethan tore off his earpiece and ran. The escalators clanked to life behind him, gears grinding like bones. He ducked into a storage closet, heart hammering, and dialed 911. No signal. The door handle jiggled. "Found you," the voice sang. Ethan lunged, slamming the door open and tackling the figure. The man, tall, wary, with hollow eyes and a jagged scar across his cheek, snarled and slashed at him with a box cutter. They grappled, crashing into shelves, until Ethan jammed his flashlight into the man's throat and fled. Police found nothing. No fingerprints. No trace of the Polaroid or the doll. Harris resigned abruptly, leaving no forwarding address. Ethan quit the next day. But as he packed his locker, a final note fluttered to the floor. "You'll miss our games." The stalker was never caught. The unraveling. Ethan tried to move on. He took a job at a hardware store, avoided crowded places, and slept with a gun under his pillow. But the paranoia clung to him like a second skin. Every creak in his apartment, every flicker of a street lamp, felt like a taunt. Then, 6 months later, the emails began. They arrived at 3:17 a.m., always from anonymous accounts. Attachments contained grainy photos, Ethan buying groceries, Ethan walking his dog, Ethan staring out his bedroom window. The subject lines were fragments of his own thoughts. "Do you still hear the dogs? The doll misses you." He changed his number, moved apartments, even left the state. But the emails followed. On a rain-soaked night, Ethan found himself driving past Willowbrook Mall. He hadn't meant to, it was a detour, a wrong turn, but the decaying structure loomed ahead, its broken sign buzzing faintly. Something compelled him to stop. The mall was darker now, its windows shattered, vines clawing up the walls. Ethan's flashlight trembled in his hand as he stepped inside. The air smelled of mildew and something metallic. In the toy store, the porcelain doll waited. Its head had been glued back together, the cracks forming a spiderweb across its face. A new Polaroid lay at its feet. The photo showed Ethan standing in the mall, tonight, his back to the camera. Behind him, blurred but unmistakable, was the red-hooded figure. Ethan didn't run this time. He waited in the security office, knife in hand, until the footsteps echoed outside the door. The handle turned slowly. "Ready to play again?" the voice rasped. The door swung open. Years later, Ethan still jumps at the sound of laughter. He avoids malls, parks, and anywhere shadows gather. But sometimes, when he's alone at night, he swears he hears the creak of rusty escalators, and a voice, soft and mocking, whispering, "Ready to play again?" And in the darkest corners of his mind, he wonders if he ever truly left Willowbrook Mall, or if it's still there, waiting, its hollow heart beating in time with his own.